Hey there, it's Lenny Magill with the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop here in the Nashville studios today. And today, we're going to talk about something that I couldn't do in California, but I can do here in Tennessee. Here in the Nashville studios and here in our Nashville facility, we have suppressors or silencers, which, like I said, in California, it can't even think about them. So, of course, I've always been fascinated by suppressors or silencers, and I think most people are because, the concept is, does it really make it silent? And the answer is no. But it does suppress the sound significantly, and there's a lot of advantages for that, for sound suppression. Because if you're hunting, imagine that, and you don't want to wear headsets or earplugs because you want to be able to hear what's happening around you, the noise suppression is actually a very good idea. Now, think about it for military personnel as well. They want to be able to hear what's going on, but at the same time, when they're shooting, they don't want to have the noise damage that will come to your ears by shooting firearms. So, I've got a couple really cool things to look at. First, this is a Glock 19 with a factory threaded barrel. And this is an MP5 with an integral suppressor that's actually designed at the factory and comes out of the factory just like this. We're going to talk about these here in just a moment. But right now, I want to give you some research that I've done, some factoids that I thought were really interesting about suppressors. As I started to look into this to do this video, I thought, well, I actually do a little bit of research. So I thought, let me find out a little bit more about them. And wow, there's some really neat things. And the first thing that I found out, and I've got a little cheat sheet here that I'm going to read on. The first thing I found out about suppressors is that they were designed or developed in 1902. So they've been around for a while. 1902 by a guy named Hiram Percy Maxim. Now, he was the son of a famous gun inventor by the name of Hiram Stevens Maxim. Now, my first thought was, how many people do you know have the name Hiram? But what's really interesting is that Hiram Percy Maxim not only invented the modern concept of silencers or suppressors, and he called them silencers at that time, to be quite honest, but he also, and here's what's really fascinating, the same guy, Hiram Percy Maxim, not only invented the silencer, but he also invented the muffler for your car. What a great guy, huh? What a genius he was, because at that time, cars were really loud with that combustion engine and all that, and so he developed a silencer for your vehicle. Now, what's really interesting, in England, they refer to a muffler as a silencer. So if you're ever traveling and they say, yeah, I've got a silencer problem, they're typically going to talk, if you're in the UK, they're going to be talking about their muffler and not their silencer or sound suppressor for their firearm. So I thought that was a very interesting little factoid. The muffler for the internal combustion engines was developed in parallel with the firearm silencer. So he kind of did it at the same time, at about the same time period. And it has a lot of the same techniques as far as how a silencer works. And when you look inside, you can kind of see that there's concentric rings, and they're called, little baffles basically, that allow the bullet to travel through the hole exactly, okay? But some of the gases are redirected and delayed, which the delay factor is what actually cuts down on the sound. So if you think about sound and you think about what is sound, sound is really just air moving at a rapid pace that we hear vibrating. That's how we hear the vibration of the air. And so the bullet comes out if there's no suppressor, no sound suppressor. The bullet itself has a signature, but the gas also has a signature that is pushing other air. So the suppressor or silencer actually slows down a lot of the gases, which in turn reduces a lot of the sound you hear. Now, when you have a gun, you're always going to hear, make sure this is unloaded, it is, you're always going to hear the sound of the slide racking. Okay, so it's never completely silent. No matter what you do with the gases, you're going to hear, unless it's a bolt action gun. All right, so that's the one thing that you're definitely going to hear. So the suppressor, silencer, is designed to slow down the gases, which in turn, it doesn't have as much impact on the surrounding air, and that's what reduces the overall sound. Now, here's another factoid, which I felt was very interesting. In 2020, just recently here, just last year, the U.S. Marine Corps bought 7,000 suppressors for their M4s and other firearms. And they're expected, they've worked so well, not only from there's two sides of the coin that the suppressors do, not only from a sound suppression, but also a muzzle flip reducer, as well as a recoil reducer. It allows a shooter to be much more accurate shot to shot because the gun isn't jumping around so much, because a lot of those gases that make the gun jump all over the place are reduced or delayed, and hence the Marine Corps is going to buy about 30,000 more of these things. So that's what's going on. So, people are seeing that, okay, wow, these are very effective for a lot of different reasons. Now, like I said earlier, if you're a hunter, it makes a lot of sense to have a sound suppressor, because then you can, walk around and not have to have earplugs on, and you see the shot you have to take and bang, and it doesn't hurt yourself. It doesn't hurt your ears. And, if anybody who has been around shooting for any length of time, and you're not wearing earphones or sound earplugs or some way to suppress that sound, you will damage your ears. I mean, that's just like, rock stars, who are playing in front of big speakers. They damage their ears. So there's some really interesting benefits to the sound suppressor technology. Now, here's some more factoids that I dug up, which I thought were pretty interesting. The United States Firearms Act, the NFA, the National Firearms Act of 1934. Okay, that's really important. Okay, that was a kind of a milestone there, where they outlawed fully automatic guns. They outlawed suppressors at that time as well. 1934, the NFA. You've heard the NFA. It stands for National Firearms Act. It began to regulate ownership. So you can, in many states, I think 42 states allow you to own a suppressor. Of course, there are 8 states that don't allow you to. And here are the states: California, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island all prohibit the possession or use of a sound suppressor or silencer. The other 42 states allow you to own them if you follow the rules of the NFA and the ATF, which is to get a tax stamp, which is basically $200. So it works like this. It's a very simplified version of what happens. Suppose you live in Tennessee, okay? You want to buy a suppressor. And we do sell suppressors here at our store, by the way. So you want to buy that suppressor. You come in and you do paperwork that is submitted to the ATF, and you pay a fee of $200. That fee is attached to the serial number of the particular suppressor that you want to buy. So you purchase the suppressor, basically you own it, but you can't take possession of it until your paperwork comes back from the ATF to verify that you're not a felon and all the other things that are there, and plus to register the fact that you have a suppressor and that particular suppressor you have. All right, so it's really important. So typically now, what we've understood is that the paperwork is taking anywhere from 4 to 6 months, sometimes a little faster, sometimes a little bit less, but that's a pretty good time frame to understand. Of course, with the COVID and everybody working at home, it's taking a little bit longer. But you pay your tax stamp, you submit it to them, you buy the suppressor, then we as an FFL, an SOT FFL, will actually hold on to the suppressor. And what's good about this particular facility is that we actually have a shooting range. So here's what happens. We hold on to the suppressor until we get the paperwork back from the ATF, but you can still come in and actually shoot it, you just can't take it off premises. So you can come in, play with it a little bit, give it back to us. It's kind of a conjugal visit for your suppressor. And then we hold on to it until we get the paperwork. Once we get the paperwork, you're allowed to possess it. And you typically have that paperwork with you no matter where you go. So you've got your tax stamp so that if anybody ever says, hey, what's that all about? Well, look, here's my tax stamp. Here's the serial number. Here's the serial number. They match up. Everybody's happy. Now, here's one thing that I thought was very interesting. A suppressor, of course, looks like this, right? And they, typically all have the same profile. There's different mechanisms, different companies do different things inside. However, the ATF says that any device, and the key word is any device that is used or intended to be used to suppress sound could be considered a suppressor. So you'll see on YouTube, a lot of people do some crazy things. They'll put a plastic bottle and shoot through it, and it will, in fact, suppress some of the sound because it's redirecting some of the gases. I've seen or heard of people who have used oil filters. If you think about an oil filter, same concept, has a bunch of baffles inside of it. They're paper, but they would actually shoot right through the oil filter, and that in turn would suppress the sound signature somewhat. And there's a couple other ways, pillows and all kinds of other things people have done. But the key to keep in mind is that all of those are considered suppressors, and all of those would put you in a heap of trouble. So don't do it, okay? Do it the right way. If you live in the right states, come on down and buy it, file your tax stamp, wait for it, and then once you have it, you're good to go. Another interesting fact related to that whole concept, that if you do use a suppressor illegally, whether you have a tax stamp or not, it is a very punishable crime with basically 30 years in jail. I mean, it wasn't like up to 30 years, it starts at 30. So that would be a crime on top of the crime. So if you rob a liquor store and you have one of these, it's 30 over here plus 10 over here for the liquor store or whatever they give you for that, I don't know. But bottom line is, don't be stupid. Follow the laws. It allows you to go ahead and own these and own them in a way, because there's a lot of benefits to it. Like I said, sound suppression for your hearing, but also allows you to shoot more accurately because there's not as much muzzle flip and jump. And it really is just a pleasant shooting gun because there's no felt recoil. There's less felt recoil. How's that? So, when we have people shoot this, they say to me it's like a water gun almost, because the recoil almost pulls the gun back into you because those gases are circulating back. So it doesn't have a lot of muzzle jump because of the weight, but it doesn't have a lot of felt recoil because of the way the gases are circled back into your into the suppressor. Now, of course, the gases do escape at some point. They're just delayed. And again, that delay factor is what suppresses the sound. The speed of sound, by the way, is 1,125 feet per second. That's kind of the baseline, 1,125. It is affected by humidity, altitude, temperature. So it can vary a little bit, but basically 1125. We know that most 9mm ammo, if it's a 115 grain, is going to be pushing 1,200, 1,300 feet per second. So those rounds are basically supersonic rounds. They are going to break the sound barrier, and you're going to hear the bullet crack as much as you will the rack of the slide, but the overall bang will be less because of the suppressor. However, if you wanted to shoot a subsonic round, they do sell specific rounds for suppressors in all kinds of different calibers. Most 9mm, that is 147 grain, heavier bullet, will not reach supersonic speeds. It'll be about 900, maybe 1,000, but it should be less. Now, they do sell specific subsonic ammo, but what I've been told, what I've seen, what I've read about is that 147 grain 9mm will be actually subsonic in the sense that it won't reach up to that 1,100, and it can be fired very effectively through your 9mm guns. Both these guns are 9mm. That's why I'm talking about that. All right, one other factoid here. In the United States, like we said, they're legal to own. There's 42 states that actually have the ability to go ahead and do the tax stamp program, which we talked about. It's a legal document that allows you, to have that in your possession. And when you get that tax stamp, like I said, you make copies of it. You put it in your car, you put it in your wallet, you put it at home. Whenever you travel with it, whenever you go out to the range with it, you take it because you don't want to be sitting out there and have somebody say, "Oh my gosh, that's illegal," and they're going to confiscate it, and you got to prove back. But if you have the paperwork, you just lay it on the table, say, "Look, here it is. Here's the serial number, and look at the serial number on this one," and you've got it. So it's really important that you follow those rules and you do it. Now, the one thing, like I did say, if you ever do something stupid, it's 30 years. Now, it doesn't say up to 30 years. It's a minimum sentence of 30 years. So that's really important to keep in mind. It's pretty darn ugly. All right, let's go ahead and talk more right now about this Glock setup and about these two suppressors we have here, because we're eventually going to shoot both these just to give you a feel for what they sound like. We'll shoot the Glock without the suppressor, and then we'll install it and shoot it with the suppressor. So most suppressors you get are going to kind of look like this. And there's a big opening here because this is called what it needs is a booster of some sort that's going to allow it to attach to the barrel. And so you then have to say, well, what kind of barrel do I have? And what is the thread pitch on that barrel? The Glock factory barrel, which is what this is, very unusual, but very effective and very nice to have. This Glock factory barrel is an unusual pitch, and there's also something else that's unusual about it for a couple different reasons. So the factory pitch on this barrel is 13.5 by 1. Okay, that's the thread. So every 1 inch is 13.5 revolutions. The barrels we sell here are half by 28. Okay, so the one other interesting thing about the Glock factory barrel is that it is a left-hand turn, which means, in America, the saying is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, or lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So you loosen by going left and you tighten by going right. Well, this Glock barrel is actually the opposite. It's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey is pretty easy to remember because righty-tighty kind of rhymes. Well, here it's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. So that means that you put this suppressor on and you screw it on and it goes lefty. Now, why is that the way it is? And here's my theory is, and I think it's pretty well known that this is what most people assume is true. The barrel, inside the barrel, the lands or the grooves of the barrel go to the right. Now, there is friction on the barrel, a little bit, right? So it grabs hold of that bullet and it twists it so it has a spiral, kind of like a football, which in turn will want the gun to turn left, which in turn allows us to continually, with this left-hand turn, tighten the suppressor onto the threads. You always want to make sure that the suppressor is completely seated onto the threads, because if it's not, and if it's off just a little bit, the bullet may intersect with some of the baffles inside, which in turn will basically ruin your suppressor, your $700 suppressor, $800 suppressor, however much these cost, right in that ballpark. So that's not a good thing. And Glock, in their wisdom, said, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and make it so that every time you shoot, it's tight. Now, people who use the righty-tighty barrels with the matching suppressor, I've seen them shoot a bunch, and then they always want to get up there and kind of, just make sure it's tight. They always get up there, they'll have a glove or a rag of some sort, some kind of heat-resistant rag, and get up there and just kind of grab it and, okay, yeah, it's tight, I feel good. Especially, even between magazines, they just don't want it to be, if it's loose just a little bit, the concentricity of the bore to the hole in the suppressor, there's that hole, That has to be lined up exactly right. And if it's not, it's going to be a problem. So that said, lefty tighty, righty loosey. We're going to go ahead now, and that leads me to this next conversation, is that when you buy a suppressor, you then have to buy this booster that has a spring on it, and you can see there's a kind of a castle nut on the bottom here. So you have to buy one of these, and the thread pitch has to match the thread pitch of your barrel. So there's really kind of two things you do. You buy the suppressor, and then you buy this booster concept right here. And you can see there's a spring on here, and this whole thing is all designed not only to fit there, but also to allow the gases and the slide to function properly. Because again, you're slowing down the gases, which does slow down the action, which could interfere with our harmonics of the gun loading and unloading and reloading itself automatically. So these springs and this concept is all designed to compensate for that. So this guy just goes straight into here. Again, you'll buy this separately, and you can, if you were to put this on a different gun with a different barrel, you could basically just get another one of these, another booster, put that one aside and say, okay, now I'm going to use a different barrel and put it on a different gun. You put your booster in, and the castle gears, we're actually going to line up down here. So we're going to stick it in here. Now it is a little tight, and we'll get it in here. It looks like I've got it pretty well seated right there. And then it's got a little cap on it. Oops. And so we're going to go ahead and just screw our cap straight down onto this thing. And then it's ready to go. So we'll, of course, want to tighten this down with a little a wrench just to make sure it's totally tight. But I'll hand tighten it right now just to kind of get it set up. So once we get it on here, it will seat itself. Okay, good. And now we go on to the gun itself. So I have the right booster. Now again, like I said, you can interchange these boosters based upon the barrel and the thread pitch of the barrel, because the thread pitch of the booster will be separate. And then we just put it on here, and now what's really interesting is, see, I'm backwards here, so we're going to go lefty. I'm going to go this way. And lefty, tighty. And that's it. And that's what it looks like. And like I said, if you live here in Tennessee, you can come into our shop and buy a suppressor, file your tax stamp. It can sit here and wait for you. You can come back and visit it, shoot it a little bit. We'll keep it till your tax stamp comes back. Once you get your tax stamp, you can walk out the door with it and enjoy the benefits of a sound suppressor or silencer. And, you know, in essence, a lot of people, you know, in the nation will say, well, it's not really a silencer, it's a suppressor. However, the ATF, and it was invented and patented as a silencer. There is one other factoid here that I will share with you related to these devices. In 2011, there was the National Rifle Association began a campaign to increase civilian use of silencers for hunting and sport shooting, setting the goals of easing the restrictions of the NFA, the federal NFA legislation of 1934, and in various states regulating the sale and ownership of firearm suppressors. The idea was to just make it easier. So in that same year, the American Silencer Association was founded by U.S. manufacturers of silencers. Now, what's interesting is they decided to change their name in 2014 to the American Suppressor Association, because the word silencer is kind of nasty, mean, whereas suppressor is kind of acceptable. Isn't that crazy? But the ASA is really the governing body, or the lobbying body that is promoting the safe and legal ownership of suppressors. And I think it's important that you recognize who they are. all the gun control people said, oh, you just changed the name from silencer to suppressor because you didn't want it to sound so bad. Well, yeah, because you're the guys who make it sound so bad. Silencer, suppressor, they're the same thing in a sense. The bottom line is there's some valid reasons to own one. Now, again, it's not like the movies where there's not going to be any sound and no one's not going to be able to hear it. It's just that it really reduces, it suppresses the overall sound. So when we go out and shoot these, we're going to shoot them both inside and we're also going to shoot them outside so you get a real good feel for this sound difference. One of the things we noticed when we were out at the range shooting this is that when we're shooting steel plates with this, you can actually hear the steel plate gong much more so than when you shoot it without a suppressor, because all that, it kind of goes away. You'll hear some sound, but then when you hit that steel plate, it's like, ding, but you won't hear that when you actually have no suppressor. And we're going to prove that here when we get outside to the range out in the farm. But right now, let's take this into the range and test it with both silencer and without. All right, we're here in the range number 2 here in Nashville. It's a combat room. We don't shoot down lanes because, well, lanes are boring. Now, here's what we've got set up. Got a microphone up top here, and then we've downloaded this really cool app that gives us a decibel level onto this cell phone that we're using. And I'm going to go ahead and push the record button and record this session. I'm going to shoot, first of all, with the Glock 19 without the suppressor. And then I'll install the suppressor and come back and shoot again. And we're recording the whole thing. We're going to see what, perceived sound there is through the microphones, and then hopefully be able to get an accurate reading through this decibel meter. I won't be able to see this right away, but you'll see it on camera, and hopefully we'll see a significant difference. And I believe we will. Now, the other thing that we're also going to notice is the actual recoil reduction, muzzle flip, and I'll feel that. You may even see that a little bit with the gun if you pay really close attention. Glock 19, it's unloaded right now. We are going to go ahead and shoot it without suppressor. So let me go ahead and get my ears and my eyes together here, and I will go ahead and shoot. We're shooting 115 grain 9mm ammo, just practice ammo. Nothing special, just something to kind of give us a relative terminology. Again, like we mentioned, the 147 grain would be slower, so it won't be quite as quote-unquote loud. All right, magazine is loaded. I'm going to just shoot one round. Let me go ahead and push the record button here. Let me load this up real quick. And, all right, unload. I'm going to keep that recording, so let me hurry up and I'll go ahead and install the suppressor. Now, interestingly, on the suppressor, I've got it backwards here. If I were looking at the gun, I would go left. Because it's backwards, I'm actually going to go right. So I'm going to put it on here and twist it to the right, get it started. Don't want to be careful not to cross those threads. There we go. All right, so I want to make sure it's tight. That's one of the main things, because if it's loose, you may not have the exact concentricity that you're looking for. Okay, now we're still recording. How about that? Sounded less, felt less. Let's check it out. All right, let's go ahead and take a peek at those numbers from the suppressor versus non-suppressor indoors here. So if we look at the first shot without a suppressor, it's about 118 decibels. Now coming with the suppressor, it's 96 decibels. So it's about a 20% decline overall in sound. But indoors, it's a kind of a skewed thing because the sound is captured and it's not quite the same. Now, if you're shooting indoors, obviously there's a difference there, right there, that 20%. Let's take it out to the range, though, and see if there's a difference outdoors where the sound has more space to move. All right, we're now here at the farm out here in Hampshire, Tennessee, just about 50 miles south of Nashville. It's nice and quiet, birds are chirping. And the concept here is we're going to shoot this Glock 19 without the suppressor and then shoot it with the suppressor. And my thoughts are, because it's not an enclosed space, we may be able to determine or see more of the sound suppression of the suppressor versus indoors. Indoors, you know, there was maybe a 20 or 30% decrease in sound. I think you're going to see more here. And the other thing we're going to try to do too is I'll do a close-up shot, and then I'm going to have the camera go way far back and see what it sounds like, you know, maybe 50 yards away. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got my eyes and ears on. I'm not going to shoot any steel. I'm just going to shoot just so we can hear the report. First report we're going to hear is going to be just the sound of a standard Glock 19, no suppressor. And here we go. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and load it. And I will put the suppressor on. And again, remember when we put these on, it's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. But because I'm backwards, I'm actually going to tighten it by turning it to the right. And here we go. Now again, the main thing you want to do when you have a suppressor is make sure it is tight, because we want those holes to line up. We do not want to shoot a little hole throughout here, because it will certainly interfere with the ability of the suppressor to suppress. Okay, there we go. And now with suppressor. I'd say that's significantly less. I'm going to try it without my earphones real quick, just to see. So what I'm hearing is a crack, and the crack is the subsonic or the supersonic sound of the bullet traveling through the air. But I'm not hearing a lot of bang. And I hope we can demonstrate that here on camera. Now let's go ahead and try this one more time. We'll have the camera move way back. Again, what you're going to hear more so than anything is the crack as the bullet breaks the speed of sound. So my camera is about 50 yards away, and I'll be shooting the non-suppressed Glock 19. So load it up, one shot, and let's see how it sounds. And here we go, one shot with suppressor. All right, so there's our little sound experiment with and without a suppressor. I think that I could hear the difference. One of the things I will say is with the suppressor it was louder than I thought, but it was tolerable without earring protection. It was literally, it didn't hurt as much, didn't even, you know, hurt at all. I could hear the crack, but the sound was more downrange where the bullet was breaking that speed of sound, so it didn't necessarily affect my ears. But I think the main thing is to remember that if you truly want to get the most out of your suppressor, you're probably going to want to shoot that subsonic ammunition, which could be the 147, or by the box it says Subsonic on it. And that's probably how you'll get it. But, you know, bottom line is suppressors are fun. They're legal here in Tennessee, and it has a lot of common sense, because the one thing I am noticing is there is like no recoil and there's no muzzle flip. A lot of that is due to the sheer weight of this thing. So, you know, bottom line is if you're looking for a suppressor, we've got them, but you got to live in Tennessee or one of the other free states, that is. Now, to close this out and say goodbye, I've got one last fun thing to do. All right, now here's a double whammy for you. Here in Tennessee, of course this is legal, but in California, oh my gosh, it's a suppressed fire, fully automatic MP5. And the nice thing about this is that there's literally no recoil. The suppressor actually really eats up a lot of the recoil. The biggest challenge is just to lean into it and make this thing stay on target. I've got 20 rounds loaded up. Let's see how we do here. Just like that. Lots of fun. And we've got lots of fun here in Nashville. Come see the facility. If you're a member, you get to shoot all this fun stuff as part of your membership for free. And if you're not, we've got day passes and other ways you can actually rent this stuff. If you're visiting, come in. We've got some great ranges, got some great people, and it's a great time here in Nashville. I'm Lenny Magill. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here in Nashville, Tennessee.